Hey y'all, we're back again. We are live at 5, actually 4:58, so we're a little bit early today, doing another live at 5 session. And today we have Carrie Hefner, horticulture agent. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Good to be here.
It's good to have you here. We've been getting a lot of gardening questions lately, so we definitely wanted to have you on. And we did take some questions beforehand, so we will get to those first. But
Okay.
then, what do you plan on talking about today?
Well, I thought today we would focus on vegetable gardening and fruit trees.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, we'll talk about that. And so are all the agents working from home? How's that working for y'all?
Yes. So during this situation with COVID-19, we want everybody to understand that the LSU Ag Center is open, and it's just we're not at the office. We are working remotely, either from home or, like I am, from an undisclosed location. And we're not in the office, but we are available,
Okay.
and we want everyone to know that.
Okay. So how would people best contact you right now, all the different agents?
Best way is by email, and we sitting here at our computers, we have access to our email just about all the time.
Okay, so don't
And,
call you basically because you're not in the office, so you don't have
right,
your office phone.
right, and those of us, there are a few people like me, for example. Some of my master gardeners do have my cell number, but the
Okay.
general public doesn't. Um, but email is the surefire way.
Okay. And I know that we can find all the agents' email addresses on the Ag Center website. It's actually
Yeah,
on the homepage. You can go there, find your parish, find your agent, and it'll have their contact information.
absolutely, absolutely.
So, anyways, for everyone logging on, this is Carrie Hefner. I'm pointing the wrong way again. He is a horticulture agent. Would you like to tell him a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I'm the area horticulturist in Washita, Morehouse, and Union parishes, so North Louisiana, which, depending on who you ask, some people see as South Arkansas. That's okay. We don't mind. Um, and my background is actually in botany, not horticulture per se. I hold a bachelor's degree in botany and a master's degree in biology. And so horticulture is just applied botany, so it works out very well. And I have to say, I've been an agent for 5 years and have not had a bad day at work.
Man, that's a good job.
So, so
I have to say that's a very good job. Do you know, this is a question from Mark over here. He's asking, are
mhm.
soil samples being tested right now?
It is my understanding, Mark, that the soil lab is not operational right now while all this is closed down. So
That's unfortunate,
yeah,
but hopefully we'll get back to it all.
yeah.
Anyways, but yeah, so you're going to talk about some different things today. Can you introduce us to that?
Sure. I thought we would. It's since it's spring and we're going into vegetable gardening time, and with folks at home right now during the shelter-in-place order, I think I'm seeing more new vegetable gardeners setting up gardens this year than ever before. We wish the circumstances were a little different, but they are going in, and I think that's exciting. And so vegetables are the topic right now. And so here in North Louisiana, we're about 1 to 2 weeks behind South Louisiana.
Okay.
And so right now things are going in. People are planting tomatoes, peppers, the warm weather stuff. I did notice, I looked at the 10-day forecast just before we went on, and there's one night where I think we're supposed to dip back down in the 40s, but other than that, we should be good. And I thought we would discuss a little bit about container gardening, raised bed gardening. That's a big area of interest right now, and versus in-ground gardening. And then we can move on to fruit trees if we want to.
Oh, yeah,
Container garden, huh?
definitely. You go
Okay.
ahead.
Well, we'll just start with container gardening. A lot of people are doing raised beds, and that's kind of all the rage right now. Raised bed gardening, you have to remember, is just like large containers, like growing something in a large pot, basically. Some of the more common questions we get with raised bed gardening: how high do the sides of the bed have to be? Is there a certain number of certain depth to the bed, I guess? And I tell people, well, it depends on what you're growing. Things that are more shallowly rooted, like your leafy crops, cole crops, onions, things like that, can probably do fine in something that's only 10 inches high, or maybe even 8 inches. Something that is going to require more space for a root system to grow, like a tomato plant, especially an indeterminate tomato plant. That's where you want to think about having something at least a foot tall, to give the root system. And I guess the root system, it's out of sight, out of mind. And we don't think about the fact that the root system is always growing and it needs space. And I guess the most common mistake I see folks make with container gardening is they don't get the container big enough to accommodate the root system. And I equate the root system, I make the analogy of the root system kind of being like your small intestine. That's where a plant absorbs nutrients, and it's highly forked and bifurcated, increases surface area so plants can pull nutrients out of the soil solution efficiently. And you think about what our small intestine does. That's where we absorb nutrients from our food. It's highly convoluted, but a normal size adult will have about 6 feet of intestine, so like a 3-year-old small intestine won't work on a normal size adult. So I see these big,
that makes sense.
Yeah. And I see big plants jammed into tiny pots, and then we wonder why they don't thrive. They're not productive, and they seem to have a lot of trouble. So use containers that are large enough to accommodate the plant's root system. Healthy root system means a healthy plant. So
fair enough. Tammy's asking, I see people using cedar for raised beds. Some are using pressure treated lumber. Does that affect the plants?
It doesn't. And I think it was 2003, but don't quote me on that, but somewhere along there, the chemicals that were being used to pressure treat lumber changed, and it's perfectly fine. You can go to your home improvement stores and buy pressure treated lumber to make raised beds with, and it'll work just fine. When I had raised beds several years ago at our old house, before we moved out into the parish, I used untreated 2x12s, and they lasted about 6 years. So I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. There is a publication, correct, on raised bed gardening from the Ag Center that people can view?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll add it to the comments after we finish this live feed so people can have a place to go.
Okay.
What kind of soil do you recommend for the raised beds?
Okay, the soil, that's kind of one of the neat things about raised bed gardening is you're in control of what medium is in there. So a good soil will have a good mix of mineral and organic components. And so, and a lot of places, garden centers will sell a garden mix, quote unquote. And ironically, soil is one of the costlier upfront expenses with raised beds, which you wouldn't think it is, but it is. And so Brian's asking, should he till his raised bed or not? Well, I think that's personal preference. In my beds, I could simply turn the soil over with a shovel, so tilling wasn't required. I think that's more personal preference. There's some argument that the rotary tines on a tiller kind of leave a flat surface at the bottom, and that has something to do with water not being able to percolate effectively. That hasn't been my experience when I've used a tiller, but either way, Brian, should work for whatever works for you. And so it is possible to over organic a soil too. So you still need the sand silt clay. You still need that mineral component. And so what we encourage folks to do is to buy topsoil, which up here in North Louisiana generally is a very sandy, loamy uh, medium, and then amend that with organic matter. And by the way, folks, if you're not composting at home, shame on you. You should absolutely have a compost pile. Best stuff in the world, best additive to a vegetable garden there is.
Now, I do have a question. There was someone asked about, are there any fruits or vegetables that grow well in shade, all shade in Louisiana? So do the vegetables have to be raised beds in full sun?
Okay, so generally, if we're looking at something like a tomato plant or an eggplant or snap beans or something like that, we do want full sun. With shadier situations, your leafy crops will tend to be a little more shade tolerant than those that are actually producing some type of fruit. And people don't think of a snap bean as a fruit, but it is.
Okay.
So I would say, like for example, Swiss chard
Mhm.
is for me just a must. You have to have Swiss chard. If you've never grown Swiss chard, give it a try. It's the easiest
It's
stuff in the
good.
world, and it's great. And it's so versatile. You can use it like lettuce in a salad. You can cook it like mustard greens. It's just basically a beet that doesn't form the round root. And over at one of the municipal parks here in West Monroe, they are using Swiss chard in an ornamental setting. So that's a good example of being able to use an edible as an ornamental, and it's in a bed that's somewhat shady, and it's thriving over there. Looks quite good. So.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, we're just wanting to know, and that's a good to know. Anything else when it comes to, let's see, we have one from Ella, Merlaton planting. How much shade is good for them?
Oh, wow. I don't know. We don't grow Merlaton up here. That's South Louisiana.
That's a South Louisiana thing, so they can email
That's
their
a,
agent.
yeah, that's a chayote squash. My guess would be you would want as much sun as you could get on that. So
Sure.
like any other squash.
We have a question from Wes we took earlier. When is it too late to plant tomato plants?
Oh yeah. So the thing about tomato plants is as we move into the hotter parts of the summer, when our heat and humidity are really raging, they tend to slow down production. The spring tomatoes tend to slow down because all that heat and humidity interferes with pollination. And then once temperatures moderate some, if you still have the vines, we get over into September for us, past Labor Day, they might kick in again once temperatures moderate. So if you're going to go grow spring tomatoes, summer tomatoes, plant them for North Louisiana, you'll plant now. And once you get into, say, mid-June, you're probably pushing it. And then you would start your fall tomato seeds in July and come in with your fall crop then. So there's someone. Huh?
Yeah. Oh, no, you go ahead.
I was going to say there's someone growing Swiss chard, rainbow Swiss chard in shade. So there you go.
That. Yeah, she said she just planted some rainbow Swiss chard in the shade, and Tammy's also asking. I bought my first heirloom tomato plant today. Some people say they require special attention. Is that true? If so, what do you recommend?
Well, it depends on the variety. Heirloom just means that the plant the seeds have been passed down from generation to generation for a while, and most likely it's what we call an open pollinated variety. You can save the seeds and germinate them next year. You'll get that same variety. Whereas something like with a Better Boy hybrid, that won't work. You can germinate the seeds and you'll get one parent or the other, or something completely new, or nothing at all. So it just depends. I know for North Louisiana, some heirloom varieties that have done well are Cherokee Purple, Black Crim, Pink Brandywine, although they're not terribly productive for us. I have my favorite heirloom, just for the name alone, is Radiator Charlie's Mortgage Lifter. How's that? and there's a story behind that. So Tammy, it's just going to depend on what variety you have. I have grown them. I've grown a number of heirloom varieties and babied them with mixed results. I grew Cherokee purples one time, neglected them. They grew like weeds, were never more productive. So the heirlooms, if you ask me, sort of revert back to a weedier nature. And they don't need a whole lot of attention. They're not disease resistant, of course. So, yeah, Cherokee purple, that's a very popular heirloom right now. There used to be one called Cherokee chocolate that I don't see that very much anymore. But so Cherokee purple should do very well for you, Tammy.
Christy asked, "Are there any organic options to prevent squash vine borers?"
Yeah, that insect was a real problem last year. So when you plant your squash and you have several inches of length on the stem, what I have done is use something like a pyrethrin Garden Safe Markets one. It's ready to go, ready to spray right out of the bottle. You can spray that on the stem, and that seemed to keep them away. You can wrap the stem with either newspaper or a strip of tin foil, something like very much like a cutworm collar. And the moth can't lay the egg on the stem, and therefore the grub can't develop the actual borer. And so that would be another way. And if you can recognize what the squash vine borer moth looks like, and when you see it, try to eliminate it. It looks, I know the first time I saw it, I would have never guessed it was a moth. It looks more like a wasp or something like that to me. But
yeah.
So I would say either treat the stem, and with the pyrethrin, you have to be very careful not to get it around the flowers because you would want your insect pollinators to not encounter it. But spray it on the stem and or use a collar of newspaper or tin foil, something like that.
Great. Thank you. He's also asking, what's the best way to grow parsley? I just my needs. What do I do?
Yeah, and our master gardeners, we were selling parsley in our plant sale, and yeah, they soaked the seed, and we started them in our greenhouse, and they germinated just fine. You could grow them, and you could start them off in a pot and just transplant the seedlings once they get the first true leaves on them. So very easy.
Great. I had a couple questions earlier from a couple different people. What can be grown in right now for Louisiana? We've had quite a few people asking that. Could you run down vegetable crops right now?
Okay, so for North Louisiana, now is the time to get out tomatoes. You can get out snap beans. I saw people asking about potatoes. Probably the ship has sort of sailed on potatoes this time. You could save some seed potatoes for a fall crop, maybe. And so yeah, get your peppers out now. It's time to start okra seeds. In fact, I just put some on to soak for 24 hours yesterday. So I'll start those in 6-packs and then transplant them out. Some people have already started. If you're in South Louisiana, you're about 2 weeks ahead of us, as I said. So I'm already seeing people harvesting in South Louisiana, snap beans and things like that. So for us here in North Louisiana, just about anything is ready to go out. I think I would hold off on eggplants until we warm up a little more. They really like hot weather. So
okay.
But yeah, just about anything right now.
Right. What's the spacing for tomato plants? Wes was saying.
Oh, okay. So with tomato plants, we have to worry about a number of fungal pathogens. And I have planted tomato plants as far apart as 3 feet. Depending on the variety, again, if you're growing a determinate variety, it's only going to get to a certain size. You could probably get away with crowding those in a little closer, but you still want to leave enough space to allow good air circulation. So 2 to 3 feet, I think, would be about where you'd want to be.
Okay.
just so you can keep fungal spores blowing through. And with tomato plants, make sure you pinch off the bottommost pair of leaves. So soil that might be inoculated with fungal spores won't splash up on the foliage. Um, and when you're putting out tomato plants, remember, plant them deep. You can set tomato plants very deep and they'll get a good root system. So,
Okay. And right now, a couple of people have been asking me, do we want to encourage people to go shop at the garden stores right now and things like that? Like, what's your recommendation? Maybe like pick up?
yeah, if you can find a store where I know a couple of the places here in town, they'll come out to your car, ask what you want. They'll go in, get it, ring it up for you, and then come out and handle the payment that way.
Great.
Yeah, and
What are y'all doing there for the Master Gardener sale?
the what?
The Master Gardener sale y'all are having? What are y'all doing for it?
Oh yeah, well that was we are doing something we've never done before in light of all the situation, the Northeast Louisiana Master Gardeners, when it became obvious that our plant sale, our spring plant sale, which was supposed to happen this past Saturday, wasn't going to. We decided to post our inventory lists up on our Facebook page, Northeast Louisiana Master Gardeners, and let people email the order in to me. We pull the order and deliver it to their front porch with the understanding that they either stay inside or if they do come outside, they keep their distance.
Awesome.
And they clip their check to like their mailbox or lay it on a piece of furniture on the patio or whatever. We drop the plants off, collect our payment, and that's how we do it. Not ideal, but it seems to be working. So
for now, yeah, it's delivery or kind of pickup. So I know a lot of garden centers are offering like pickup on the curb. So I mean, we highly recommend doing it right now.
Yeah, right.
So that's where we're at. And did want to ask you, you brought some plants to show us.
Yeah, I brought in a few things. So before all of this situation with coronavirus developed, we were on the path to developing a seed preservation program for North Louisiana.
Cool.
And so I brought some things that are interesting. I'll just show you one. This is a tomato plant that we're selling. We're excited to sell this variety. Our master gardeners are selling it this year. This is called Louisiana Gulf State. And it's an old LSU variety that was developed down on campus in Baton Rouge on some land that roughly is where the Alumni Center now stands. But that's where the research area down on campus was. But it's an old variety. A lot of people come into the office and ask for these old LSU varieties. And I do a little homework on them and find out, lo and behold, they're still available. But you can save the seeds from that and have that variety 100 years from now. So
pretty cool.
And let's see. This is kind of my pride and joy. This is a watermelon. We're not selling this, but it's worth mentioning. This is a variety called Red and Sweet. Now, you're not going to find that in your garden center. At least I don't think you will. But this was the last watermelon variety released from the Calhoun Research Station, which is right here in Ouachita Parish, or was. It closed down several years ago. But this is the last variety, Red and Sweet. And I gave a talk to the Marion Garden Club up in Union Parish. And a lady, Mrs. Lula Shirtliff, came up to me and said, I have something you might be interested in. Cool. And it turned out to be the seeds that an agent had left her. And this particular seed was collected and stored in 2003. Some of them go back to 2001. So they're nearly 20 years old, the seeds are.
So our watermelon plants, are they a summer crop?
Yeah, hot weather. It's time to get them in now. They can go out anytime now through May, and they like hot weather. To get a sweet melon, you don't want a lot of rain leading up to time of harvest. So, but they're a summer crop, no question. So.
Okay, because Derek was asking, we already have our tomatoes and potatoes out in southern Mississippi. What are some good hot weather crops to put down after I harvest?
Oh yeah, watermelon, okra. Okra is a can't miss hot weather crop. In fact, when we opened the Children's Coalition Garden a couple years ago here in Monroe, it was in July, and of course said, "Well, what's going to grow now?" And we planted okra, and it was wonderful.
Really?
Very productive.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. Carly's saying, thanks for doing this live chat. I had the spring garden show in New Orleans, was canceled last weekend, but glad everyone's safe at home. We are too, Carly. You know, we're going to try to hope next year will be totally different. You know, this is such an unexpected public health emergency. We all have to stay safe, but we're happy to put out as much information as we possibly can, which is why we're doing the live feeds. And she says, we are trying to sprout an avocado seed as a school project. Any other grocery store seeds that are easy to sprout?
Oh yeah. If you go get some dried beans, they should sprout very readily. The celery seed from the spice rack, you'll have mixed results with it. But the dried beans are always very simple to do. And if you can find raw peanuts, they'll germinate.
Cool. Denise says, do you recommend drip watering systems for square foot raised garden beds? She's in South Louisiana.
Yeah, and drip watering systems, or if you're watering it manually, you want to put the end of the hose down close to the base of the plant, if not right on the ground, and let water percolate in. As much as possible, you want to keep the foliage dry so you don't set the scene for fungal issues. So as much as possible, let the water go directly to the root system, and that's where it's needed most. So drip watering, or if you're manually watering, put the end of the hose right down by the roots.
You don't want it to touch the leaves, correct?
Yeah, right.
Carly also asked, any particular dried beans? Which ones?
Well, I know a lot of people do the camellia red kidney beans. They germinate pretty readily. Pinto beans, things like that.
Okay. We did have some other questions we took before. We had a lady from Instagram ask us, is it too late to tie in broadleaf basil from seed into the ground?
If depending on where she is, if she's in South Louisiana, probably not. If you're in North Louisiana, again, I looked at the 10-day forecast. We're going to dip down into the mid 40s. That's the prediction anyway. Who knows if we really will or not.
Sure.
So for basil, for all those basils, once you start having nights stay consistently about 55 degrees or above, you should be good to go with that. So.
Okay. Joanna is asking, how big should tomato sprouts be before they're placed in the ground in Northwest Louisiana? I'm growing heirloom tomatoes from seed for the first time. The plants are still inside, about 4 to 5 inches high now.
Okay, so this guy is ready to go. Now, I just moved this plant up from a 3-inch pot to this size today. And really, we could set this sucker up as this deep in the soil if we wanted to. You would pull off these leaves and you could plant this tomato exceptionally deep. Some people like to get tall tomato plants and lay them down on their side and point the tip of the plant up, and they grow quite well that way. If they're, let's see, you're saying 4 to 5 inches right now, I think I'd let them get a little taller. 10 to 12 inches tall, and you should be good to go. If they're taller than that, though, most people say, well, that's a leggy tomato plant, can't use that. Not true. The deeper you put it, the more roots will develop, and you'll have a nice, robust tomato plant. So, awesome. So Joanna, let's see, I might change that a little. I might say 8 to 10 inches, something like that.
8 to 10 inches. She'll be happy with that. Scotty's asking, do you recommend growing prickly pear?
Sure, yeah, the fruit is quite edible, and some people grow it and get the fruit off of it. So, yeah.
Fair enough. Carly said, now this is a New Orleans question. In New Orleans, can we plant edible crops directly in the ground? Should I be worried about lead? Trying to avoid shopping for potting soil.
Oh, wow. In New Orleans, gosh, I don't know. That would be a question for my colleagues in New Orleans, Anna Timmerman or Dr. Joe. They
Awesome.
could answer that better than I.
Carly, we can send you the emails afterwards. It's actually on the homepage of our website. You can locate your parish, who you're in, and then get your email. But I'll put a link in the comments.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have a couple more questions too. We have a question on crab apples. I know we're kind of changing over to fruit a little bit, but we had a lady ask, crab apples are not doing well with all the rain we've had these past several years. There has been less blooms. They've bloomed early and late. But last year we had a lot of apples, but they started rotting before they got ripe. What is going on?
Well, just some general comments. First of all, you'll see that with a lot of fruit trees. One year they'll crop really well, and then the next year after that, they'll hardly do anything. Then they have to ramp back up to production again because they use so much energy on that big crop. Again, with crab apples, I would say variety. It just depends on what variety it is. Is it getting its chill requirement? That's something you have to consider with fruit trees. And of course, the rainy climate doesn't help. It sounds like to me it's a combination of a lot of factors going into that. So with crab apples, varieties I'm familiar with are things like Yates, Dalgo. There's one called Callaway. So I would want to know, I would be interested in knowing what variety of crab apple it is.
Yeah, fair enough. We had another one from Nikki. My 6-year-old plum tree grows flowers but does not fruit. Do I have to get another one?
That's what it sounds like. So you'll have cross-pollination. Yeah. Plums are partially, there are some of them that are partially self-fertile, but by and large, they are mostly self-sterile. So you'll have to plant 2 varieties for cross-pollination. Just make sure they flower at the same time so they can cross-pollinate. But that's what it sounds like.
That's what it sounds. Yeah, I'll tell Nikki. Betsy's asking, will spaghetti squash grow in the summer in South Louisiana? How much space does each plant need?
Spaghetti squash
Louisiana
right in the heart of the summer. Usually, I know in North Louisiana, by the time we get to midsummer, the squash plants are pretty much shot. Now, there are some things called squash, like a kukutsa squash, and if you know what that is, that's actually a gourd that will grow through the season. But most of the true squash, we'll say, have given up the ghost by mid to late summer. So there again, check with Joe or Anna on that one for South Louisiana.
Fair enough. What is Chuck saying? How do you keep cilantro growing in South Louisiana? How much? I'm in Gonzales. That's the only thing I can't grow is cilantro.
My understanding is cilantro is a cool season crop. So.
Cool season. All right. Let's see. T is saying, I just transplanted a mulberry tree from the woods. It's kind of droopy. Any recommendations? I'm in Lake Charles.
Yeah, no, just keep it watered and make sure you got the planting hole large enough, again, to accommodate the root system. So 2 to 3 times as large as the root ball you dug up. And there's probably, at this time of year, there's probably some transplant shock going on. Best time to do something like that would be during the fall or winter while it's dormant. So, but just keep it watered, keep an eye on it.
I've noticed that some people are going to big box stores right now to purchase vegetables and things like that. What shouldn't they be purchasing? Because I think sometimes they purchase things that are not right for Louisiana, our regions.
Yeah, so you can go to our vegetable growing guide or go to the Louisiana home vegetable gardening book that you can find for sale online at lsuagcenter.com. And there are a lot of variety recommendations in there, all of those perfect for Louisiana. and they'll even divide it up into North or South Louisiana. With the big box stores, what you have to watch out for, the fruit tree varieties, some of those are not really suitable for Louisiana at all. And so you kind of have to watch that. But
what things, like, what should you not buy in the store, like fruit tree wise, for Louisiana?
Well, like if you have a store selling something like a Macintosh apple, that's a very high chill apple. And if we happen to have a long cold winter, that's great. It'll work. But 9 times out of 10, we do not. And so I would be leery of that one.
Okay.
And I think the prevailing paradigm is you can't grow apples in Louisiana, but you can. You just have to get the varieties that that will do well in our winters. So that meet varieties that will have their chill requirement met in Louisiana. So for North Louisiana, anywhere from 700 up to the last couple of years, it's been 800-900 chill hours. And by chill hours, we mean below 45 degrees.
Okay. Shu's asking, my pear tree has been 4 years since planted, but not flowering. What can I do to make them bloom?
That's, I would want to know, first of all, how large was the tree when you got it? And what the planting conditions were. I think with fruit trees, it's like I also see with container gardening. People, I see the most common mistake with fruit trees is people don't dig the hole large enough. Also, I would ask, did you start with a bare root tree or was it a potted tree? When you're going through a garden center or nursery looking at fruit trees, don't hesitate to lift the tree out of the pot and make sure the roots aren't growing around the root ball. That tree is root bound or pot bound, and it's going to have a very difficult time. You have to physically spread the roots out at planting, and when you're installing the tree. Bare root trees, it's usually not a problem. But I would want to know how old the tree was at planting, and I would want to know what variety it is. So could be a lot of factors.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's about it for today. Do you have any more you want to add before we sign off for today?
No, it's only thing I'll say is that while we're spending this time at home and in shelter in place, let's everyone be safe, follow CDC recommendations for personal hygiene and safety, and get out there in your gardens and landscapes. A lot of beautiful gardens are going in, so
that's
awesome.
A
good thing.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for coming on. Everybody really appreciated it. We'll have you back sometime, and thank y'all. Y'all have a good one and stay safe.